Archives of Prasar Bharati presents the timeless treasure of golden era.
Hello and welcome to Living on the Edge. For those of our viewers who say they are often depressed by many of our reports, we have only one answer. We are always on the lookout for successful conservation movements across the country, and we've covered many of them in earlier episodes. This week, we focus on two southern cities, Hyderabad, whose lakes are rapidly disappearing, and Bangalore, where groups of far-sighted citizens are launching their own conservation movements. We also show you how you can do your bit in reducing air pollution by changing the way you drive. And finally, in our global section, we examine the dangers of desertification. But first, we take a look at Hyderabad's lakes. There are over 150 of them in and around the state capital. They're a source of great natural beauty and abundant water. And yet, Hyderabad is in the throes of a severe water crisis. Part of the problem is the systematic destruction of the 400-year-old lakes. This sad fact has moved many of our viewers to write to us. K.L. Vyas of Osmania University not only asked us to investigate, but also accompanied Sunil Manoharan around the city and helped him file this report.
For over 400 years, Hyderabad and its twin city Secunderabad have got their drinking water from the 170-odd lakes in the region. Many of the lakes are man-made and play an important role in recharging groundwater, regulating the climate and in meeting the water requirements of the twin cities. And yet, today Hyderabad and Secunderabad are in the throes of a severe water crisis. A population of 4.5 million requires 765 million litres a day. The municipality is only able to supply half that amount. And instead of finding means to increase the water supply, the authorities, by acts of omission and commission, are actually allowing the destruction of the existing lakes. Take the Necklace Road for instance. It's supposed to shorten the distance between Hyderabad and Secunderabad by 3 kilometers. But the catch is that it will reduce the size of the Hussain Sagar by 20%. Not only will the carrying capacity of the lake and its role in recharging the groundwater be reduced, but so will age-old nesting grounds of migratory birds.
I think we are wasting an enormous amount of public money on a scheme which is really not necessary. It's eating into the lake. We are destroying some ecological areas on the lake shores. For example, there are some very beautiful areas with rocks and trees where birds are nesting. And to avoid a distance of 3 kilometers, really I feel is not necessary at all.
If that's not bad enough, illegal constructions are mushrooming on the lake perimeter. The modus operandi of the land grabbers is simple. Build in the dry season when the water level is low. Then build embankments around the plot when the water level rises after the monsoons.
For example, in Hyderabad, there was a very beautiful lake called Ma Saab Tank, built by in the name of 6th Nizam's mother. Today, a colony stands there. There is no lake at all. Then there is one Mir Jumla lake that is called Talab Katta. A very big slum has come up there. There is no lake at all.
Ironically, action against land grabbers is not possible because of a legal impediment. It was the erstwhile Nizams who allowed farmers to use the dry lake beds during the summer months to boost agriculture. it was understood to be a temporary measure. Today, a nominal clearance from the Revenue Department allows the conversion of patta lands into residential areas. Money is set to change hands and the clearance is obtained. As a result, the lakes are shrinking and shrinking rapidly. If you think you've heard everything, you haven't. Untreated effluents from industrial areas close to the city also flow into the Hussain Sagar and other lakes. And polluted water is actually seeping into the ground and getting into hand pumps. Instead of arresting the policy of drift, the state government seems to be ignoring the problem by persisting with a 600 crore rupee plan to meet requirements from the river Krishna.
Expensive will be there. If you get a new project, there will be expensive. Otherwise, without expensive, how will you come project?
On the other hand, people say that if you recharge the water from the lakes, it could be a very cheap option to get water from.
No, not sufficient lakes are there. If just now I told you, Hussain Sagar is there, but that water is become a pollution. Pollution, correct? Is a correct word? Pollution. So it is very difficult to drink that water.
The only bright side to this otherwise gloomy picture is a common effluent treatment plant near the lakes. Said to be Asia's first, it's a belated but welcome step. The problem is, it may be a step too small, too late. Although many industries send effluents in tankers to the effluent treatment plant, it isn't possible at present to ensure that all pollutants reach the plant.
Generally speaking, on comparison, I must say some of them are not giving whatever that is generated at their plant.
Who all?
That we cannot say that.
What type of chemical industries?
Maybe in all sorts of chemical industries, that sort of activity is there.
Unfortunately, the problems of the Hussain Sagar Lake are not unique. The Sarur Nagar Lake, built in 1624, has lost 30% of its area to illegal constructions. Besides, sewage from nearby areas is let into the lake, adversely affecting the livelihood of over 200 fishing families.
We expected that the government, particularly Hyderabad Urban Development Authority, HUDA, and other people to act fastly, because the encroachment is so powerful and so speedily the process is going on, that we feel that if the steps are not taken very urgently on war footing, we may lose a lot of area of the lakes and there won't be any point in trying to save them.
And as long as medical colleges, slums and IAS housing colonies are allowed to come up at lake edges, this can only get worse.
Somebody must take a tough stand that this was the border of the lake and this shall remain the border of the lake. And if anybody has private property, by all means, let him do fishing, let him do boating, anything connecting without destroying the water body.
Although solutions are not easy to come by, legislation for once can go a long way in preserving the lakes. A law that declares lakes to be reserved and demarcates its boundaries will strengthen the hands of the authorities in dealing with land grabbing. Besides, the creation of a lake cell within the Secretariat would meet a long-standing demand of the Hyderabad-based Society for Preservation of Environment and Quality of Life. And finally, drains flowing into the lakes would have to be diverted elsewhere. Recognition of a problem, it is said, is halfway to finding a solution. As long as the authorities continue to ignore Hyderabad's dying lakes, the cycle, begun by neglect, worsened by pollution, and accelerated by indifference, can only be unending. That is, until the lakes haven't disappeared.
If that story on Hyderabad's lakes depressed you, the next one should fill you with cheer. If you watched our program over the past 2 weeks, you would have seen stories that were seemingly critical of Bangalore's unchecked urbanization. But Manira Alva, who did the stories, was surprised to find that Bangalore is also the focus of several conservation efforts launched by conscientious citizens. The report that follows is not only an indication of what more and more people in other cities can do, but also a reminder that for every depressing story, there are several cheerful ones.
Ordinary people who believe that environmental protection can be achieved by planned action have worked wonders in India's garden city, Bangalore. By organizing individuals into groups and creating economy of scale, not only is recycling of garbage disposal becoming more lucrative, but also more efficient. Take rag picking for instance. All of us are aware of rag pickers who roam our neighborhood in search of scrap that can be recycled. In Bangalore, the combined efforts of a voluntary group and the municipal authorities have made a virtue out of the necessity of garbage disposal.
ஃபஸ்ட்டு நம்ம ஃப்ரெண்ட்ஸ் ஒருத்தர் இருந்தான், அவன் சொன்ன அது மாதிரி அங்கே வேலைக்குது போயிட்டு வரலான்ட்டு. சரி போய் பாருன்னு போனோம். அங்கே ஆஃபீஸ்கிட்ட போனோம். அவங்க சரின்ட்டு கூப்பிட்டாங்க வேலைக்கு. கூப்பிட்டோன்னே அருமாள்கிட்ட இங்கே வந்து வேலை பார்த்தோம். பிடிச்சிதான்னு கேட்டாங்க, பிடிச்சிதுன்னு சொன்னோம்.
First our motto is to clean the city, clean up the city. So this is one kind of part that we took, our office took, because nobody was interested to take this project.
But how exactly do things work? The Center for Environment Education, CEE, has organized rag pickers into groups. At present, efforts are confined to 3 localities. Each morning, in clean uniforms, workers fan into residential areas to systematically collect garbage from homes. Then, they take it to the nearest park. At the park, in a little corner, the garbage is sorted out. Non-decomposing waste, including plastic, is set aside. Organic waste is emptied into these pits which house earthworms. The waste is repeatedly mixed over many days, during which time the earthworms are converting it into manure. Once the manure is formed, it is sold to nearby houses at a reasonable rate. The cleanliness of localities where the scheme is functioning is testimony to the success of this effort. From waste recycling to animal care, Bangalore is also home to a sensitive, caring family whose efforts, though not unique, are a reminder of what others can also do. For 3 generations, the Iyengar family home in a Bangalore suburb has been a second home to injured birds, unwanted animals, and feared reptiles. It doesn't matter if it's an owl that symbolizes impending death in Indian culture, or a snake that has been chased away by terrified people. Any creature, whether hurt, misunderstood, or homeless, finds its way here.
Generally, people feel that it's a bad omen to have an owl in the house and all that. But in fact, it hasn't had any repercussions on our way of life or anything. In fact, this owl was found in one of the backyards of the house in one of the areas in Bangalore. And that lady was very frantic to get rid of this because it is a bad omen if the owl comes into the house.
This lizard is unfortunately persecuted in India because it has got a lot of fat here and fat in the body also. One is they want the fat because it's aphrodisiac, it relieves your rheumatic pain, it will help you get rid of all ailments you have. And the second thing is the skin. You might have seen they are found in most of the dhols, the musical instrument, because the skin is so tough.
Each animal here develops its own peculiar habits. The parrot picks food out of your mouth, while the owl prefers to watch people go in and out from its perch on the staircase. The snake prefers its cage and hates venturing out. What's endearing is the individual rapport individual family members share with particular animals. The kids love feeding tomatoes to the tortoise, while the snake seems to enjoy curling around the neck. Though the family is strictly vegetarian, animals are fed whatever they need. It's their love for animals that has led the Iyengars to set up an animal care trust to expand their activities. And if their enthusiasm is as great as their love for animals, any further endeavor is bound to be successful. This is Vidya Ranapura, a residential complex. With over 3,000 homes for public sector employees, Vidya Ranapura has set a record of sorts. It's the first residential complex in the country to set up a domestic sewage treatment plant without any aid from the government.
So the sewage used to be let off to the tank nearby, this lake. So that used to pollute the water and also emanate very bad smell. To avoid that, the 4 societies of which the layouts are formed, they came together and thought of providing a treatment plant.
Things got moving when the Bharat Electronics Cooperative Society allotted some of its funds towards the creation of suitable infrastructure. At a cost of 50 lakh rupees, they have been able to recycle sewage at their very doorstep. Fired by this success, the colony is now set to implement new schemes.
By the side of our plant, there is a lake. We have a plan to convert it into a boating facility area with a park around and all.
These plans may sound ambitious, but then, at one stage, so did the independent treatment plant. Yet, the plant is a reality today. This only proves that environmental action is feasible once people put their minds to it. Many citizens will find that environmental degradation in their neighborhood and their doorstep can be halted by timely and effective action. All you have to do is take a look at successful conservation efforts in Bangalore. Each of them began with a little idea.
If this program succeeds in moving many of you, or even a few of you, to effective environmental protection, it would have achieved its objective. If you're not sure how you can help, our correspondent Nandini Rajwade is always on hand to show you the way. H. Bhatt of Bombay and A. Arora of Pune wanted us to do something on vehicular pollution. Well, here's what you asked for.
In the next hour, 21 new vehicles will be added to Delhi's roads. In 24 hours, there will be 504 new vehicles. The figures for Bombay, Calcutta and Madras are almost equally impressive. But new cars are not just an indicator of higher purchasing power. They provide a grim foreboding of greater urban congestion and increased pollution. Toxic emissions from vehicles account for 70% of all atmospheric pollution. The 4 metros alone produce over 2,000 tons of pollutants every day, with Delhi accounting for nearly half that at 900 tons. The main culprit as far as pollution is concerned is leaded petrol. It contains 3 poisonous substances: carbon monoxide, nitrous oxide and lead. These gases layer the atmosphere, fill our lungs and affect 2,100,000 kilometers of road across the country. Whilst carbon monoxide, an invisible and slow killer, is by far the most deadly, international studies have shown that lead is equally dangerous. It affects the nervous system and the brain, especially in young children. Other gases emitted attack the hemoglobin in blood and cause respiratory diseases like bronchitis and asthma. Besides making people more susceptible to cancer, pregnant women are also affected adversely. Pollution-induced smog ruins vegetation, causes eye and skin irritation, and damages materials such as rubber. Overloading of trucks and buses is a major reason for excessive pollution. Besides, the mixing of diesel with petrol in 3-wheelers leads to very high level of visible pollution. Chaotic traffic conditions during peak hours also causes extremes of smoke and toxic emissions. And of course, continuous running of engines, even at lights, adds to the problem. There are several little ways in which each of us can contribute to pollution control. Regular tuning of cars ensures lower emission of carbon monoxide and other gases and also results in fuel economy. This merely involves cleaning the carburetor, spark plugs, and the air filter. Checking our driving habits by avoiding frequent acceleration and deceleration, switching off engines at red lights, and monitoring pollution levels by regular checks also helps.
If each one of us becomes conscious and aware of our individual contribution to the poisoning of the atmosphere and how individuals can help reduce it, there would be one significant outcome. over 3 crore vehicles would have lower pollution levels.
The government is considering lead-free petrol as an option to be introduced this year. But Professor H.P. Mathur of IIT Delhi says that besides being an expensive proposition, it contains twice as much benzene as leaded petrol. This chemical is said to be carcinogenic, as the fumes can cause lung cancer. The change of petrol then would only mean swapping one health hazard for another. In the end, it would seem as if individual action in itself can go a long way in preserving the ozone layer, controlling climate fluctuations, and helping us breathe clean, fresh, and healthy air.
Time now for a brief look at one more global environmental problem. This week, it's desertification or the unceasing march of the desert. Priya Somaya reports.
By the year 2000 AD, the world would have lost 1/3 of its arable lands through desertification. It is also estimated that about 1 million hectares in Asia are subject to desertification. India, China and Bangladesh, it is said, will be the worst sufferers. In fact, about 12% of India suffers from desertification. But what is behind the unending march of the desert? Desertification is a process by which the productivity of drought-prone land gradually decreases. And the causes for this are many: the cutting of trees, spread of cultivation, drought, overgrazing of cattle, poor irrigation, and use of chemical fertilizers and pesticides. Some analysts believe desertification is only a phase in a natural climatic process that often goes unnoticed because it is slow and long-term. But others feel that overexploitation of the land hastens and aggravates the trend. It is only when drought strikes that the damage becomes visible. Desertification typically begins like this. Overcultivation leads to declining soil fertility and falling crop yields. Over time, it also leads to the hardening of topsoil by rain and sun, increased soil erosion, and the spread of sand dunes. And after some years, the desert takes over the area. Rajasthan is a prime example of this trend. Data from FAO shows that while in 1951, 30% of the arid land could be cultivated, by 1971, only 20% could be cultivated. By 1972, sand dunes had increased in height by as much as 5 meters, and water productivity of wells was declining drastically. Another factor that contributes to desertification is poor irrigation practices. For instance, overuse of wells lowers the water table and allows coastal salt and brackish water to infiltrate. As a result, water used in fields is highly saline, and this lowers productivity considerably. This loss of fertility often goes disguised when the rains are good, but in a year when the rains fail, drought strikes the land and desertification gets the better of the rural community. Desertification can be checked and even reversed by improving irrigation practices, reducing livestock numbers in a particular area, afforestation, and desert reclamation. And unless this is done, countries will continue to lose precious productive land to the desert.
The cost of restoring the environmental health of the earth is estimated at a staggering $625 billion per annum. At present, developed countries only contribute $55 billion annually, far less than the agreed 0.7% of their GNP.